Oh, we still got 5 minutes to kill before the panel starts.
I know. All the stuff we just said we're going to say again in 5 minutes.
No, we're going to do the abbreviated version. We do that whole I'm Rim, I'm Scott, and we're those GeekNights. Welcome to our podcast.
Yeah, that's the part you're going to hear again in 5 minutes.
How many of you, this is your first MAGFest?
Whoa! That's way more than our other panels. Is anyone here like just today, like you just showed up? Really? Okay. You missed out a lot.
Yeah, MAGFest is probably one of our favorite gaming cons.
Yeah.
Oh, we still got 5 minutes
It's the only 24/7 joint left.
Yeah, PAX is great. I love PAX.
PAX used to go to 2 a.m. Now it goes to midnight, and it's like, it ends, it's like, huh? Okay, I guess I'll go eat dinner.
To a degree, though, because I'll tell you, 30 ain't 20. So when
it's 39 ain't 29, bro.
Yeah, you know what? 30 ain't 20.
Do you know who said? Does anyone who said that? 39 ain't 29.
This is not the crowd.
Shaquille O'Neal.
This is not the crowd for that.
I know.
I mean, watch this. Any hockey fans out there?
Somebody.
Hockey? Wow.
Okay. This one guy seems to be our fan over here. He's going to PAX South, likes hockey.
Any Rangers fans out there?
Yeah, the one guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know you? No.
I'm on your forum.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool.
Oh, okay. He knows us. All right, whatever.
It's just weird you've been doing this for so long.
Too long.
Yeah.
What's the clock say?
We still got 4 minutes to kill.
Oh my God.
Also, MAGFest, like when we go to a PAX, like you actually get a very different experience seeing our stuff at a con like this. Because at PAX, we get like prepare an hour before the panel, and we show up, and there's spotlights in a big room, and we like set up all our crap, and I let the crowd in, and we don't really interact with the crowd much. We just start doing our show. But
no, if we got 4 minutes, I got time to make sure the camera's working properly.
But this is MAGFest. We can just kind of dick around. You often get a much different version of the panels that we've done at other bigger conventions. I still don't know why there's a mosh pit. There's a bunch of debris in this mosh pit as well. But true story, at a MAGFest 3 years ago, I broke 2 ribs at MAGFest in a mosh pit, shall we say. And the moral of the story is, moshing is great, and I love moshing, but if you see a kid who looks like he's 13 or 14 and clearly does not know how to mosh, do not be anywhere near him because he will elbow you as hard as he can in the ribs and crack them. Oh, I stayed up way too late.
Because you stayed up late playing, Drunk Captain Judith. I stayed up late playing Phoenicia and Steam Park.
We turned it into, we didn't get Towerfall going until the very end. We were playing Nidhogg all night.
Nidhogg 2 or Nidhogg 1?
The real Nidhogg.
Okay.
How is Nidhogg 2?
Garbage.
Yeah, that's what we thought. I could tell just looking at it.
Yep.
I had to play it.
With my judging eye. Again, a joke only Rim got.
Well, we'll talk a lot about balance because Nidhogg.
Oh, what's up, latecomers? You already missed a whole bunch of stuff. We started early.
They missed the pre-panel. We
just
didn't
kidding.
start.
You're good.
We do have swag though, so check this out.
You kept some? You didn't get rid of all of it?
So, a lot of panels at big industry-driven game cons like Penny Arcade Expos, like the Intel panel. No one really wants to go to the Intel panel, so Intel.
No, there is someone out there who's like an Intel fanboy who wants to go to the Intel panel. They're like, they're just high on silicon. They're like, oh yeah, baby, give me those i7s.
But most of the people there are there because Intel's giving away like a video card or a CPU.
Intel makes video cards?
Actually, Intel gave away ATI cards at a panel once.
Really?
They gave away all their stuff. They gave away motherboards that weren't Intel made.
If anyone cares about, computers and stuff, right? In the near future, you're probably going to see like a 100% NVIDIA computer, right? And that's what Intel is very, very, very afraid of.
Thing is, we've been down that road before. Intel has so much R&D money.
What?
But anyway, so we very much dislike the idea of people having panels where they're really just like using swag to trick people into coming so they get a photo of all these people cheering for the crap. But I so happen to have some swag, and the deal is...
You got 1 minute to do this.
We printed GeekNights t-shirts like 8 years ago.
They're not Russian propaganda, they just look like that.
And we were selling these, and we sold a lot of them to our fans.
We didn't sell that many.
We sold like 400.
That's not that many.
So, well, back then when we had like 600 listeners, that was a big deal. But I
had hair.
found the last of them. Does anyone want a Soviet propaganda swag shirt? Bam!
All right, Rim. Why don't wait? Put Rim. This is Rim's actual hair tie that was on his actual hair.
Oh!
So hold the shirt together.
It's like getting the guitar
Let's see.
pick.
How far can you go? Yeah. Okay. All right. No guarantees of size or fit or whatever.
I think they're all mediums is all I had left.
If you buy one on Amazon, they'll print one for you on demand and give us 50 cents.
Oh, and it is 11:30. I'm Rim.
I am Scott, and we are the hosts of GeekNights. It's a podcast. That's right. If you have nothing better to do with your life except listen to us talk, and that is what you want to do for some ungodly reason, that is the thing you can do. There are free MP3s of us talking on the internet, thousands of them. You could probably spend a whole year nonstop just listening to us talk and slowly drive yourself insane if you do so choose.
The archive is 0.6 terabytes.
You can go to this website, frontrowcrew.com, and find all of those MP3s. If you go to iTunes, you'll find all the recent ones, but then it sort of stops at some point because they got like a limit or whatever. Anyway, let us talk about game balance. Woo! Okay.
Oh, we got some balance fans.
Yeah, we got some clapping beforehand. Everybody here has probably seen Threads. Oh, that's our other panels we did this weekend? Whatever.
If you can travel back in time, we did all those panels.
Right. Everyone's seen Threads like this. This one's from 2014, but I've seen ones saying the exact same thing from 2000. Right? Someone's always complaining about something in a game that's not fair. This is Counter-Strike, right? The AWP, it's a sniper rifle that kills people in one shot. Of course people are going to complain if they can't aim and use it themselves.
Yep, one pixel of the toe and you're done.
That's right. Here's people, more recent one, complaining about ye Jade Druid, a very oppressive Hearthstone deck. Oh, this is not fair. It's OP. It's OP. I go on ladder, all I see is Jade Druids. Right? Here's somebody, I guess you can't read this from where you're sitting. This is from the subreddit about a game called For Honor. I don't know if anyone... Right? And they're saying in here, please remember, this is a game is in a new genre entirely, right? Give the devs a break. Street Fighter still isn't balanced. It's like 25, 30 years old. You're expecting this brand new game and a brand new genre to be balanced. They're giving like this excuse to the devs, like, give them a break, guys, give them a break, right? I've seen threads like this my whole life, right? For the past 20-something years.
Prodigy Internet, I'd see those. The old BBSs I would dial into.
What games are they complaining about in Prodigy Internet?
NES games.
All right. Sure, right? And whenever I see these, they're always in individual communities for individual games complaining about specific things, right? And I always find myself looking at, the games from a broader perspective, right? And seeing the reasons that all games are balanced or unbalanced. And I want to post the same answer over and over again. Now, I could write an essay and copy and paste it in every single forum.
Yeah, because everyone wants to read the essay that some dude wrote about a video game.
Right, and get a bunch of downvotes or be ignored. Right? But instead, what you're going to do is, in a few weeks after PAX South, we're going to put up either this video or the PAX South video of this panel, and I want you to go to those threads whenever you see one and just post a link to this. And it's going to answer all the questions and shut everyone down, and maybe we can reduce those threads by like 10% or something like that.
A noble endeavor.
Right, or maybe start spreading the meme, right? Maybe I'll make a funny face during the panel, and that will work out. All right? So there you go. All right, let's talk about balance. First thing, we are only talking about multiplayer competitive games.
Ortho games. Games where players are ranked in some fashion. First place, second place, third place. There are winners and there are losers. Everyone is trying to win the game. We're not talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm. Now, forget about imbalance, right? Diablo here is a game where there's beyond imbalance. There's outright cheating in Diablo. Diablo has a long history of cheating, duplicating items, just hacking your stats, hacking your save files, right? And you know what? Diablo, you're playing against the computer. You're not playing against real people, right? And no one pointed out this thing so eloquently as Jerry from Penny Arcade. He says, by their own admission, Diablo isn't really focused around a PvP experience. If you're playing with someone who has either duped items or whatever, all it means is that you'll be more likely to defeat Satan. Without a means to gain advantage over another, cheating as a concept becomes substantially more opaque. Who is the cheated party precisely? Satan the devil? Fuck him. Who cares?
Now, you'll see a lot of people complaining about cheating in games that have multiplayer elements but are primarily single player because people feel cheated by the fact that someone else wasted less time achieving the same level of fun.
Right, so cheating, when someone's cheating and someone's not cheating, that's an extreme form of imbalance, right? That's why it still matters, right? But if you're not cheating another person, if you're cheating against a computer, or the computer's cheating against you, if Mario Kart bots are going super fast to make up for their shitty AI, or You know, if you're cheating because, you know, this game is ridiculously hard, or you just want to cheat in SimCity to make a bunch of Godzillas show up, who cares? That doesn't matter. We only care about making games balanced when we're playing against other human beings to make them nice and fair so no one can really complain, all right, and to make those threads. All right, what is balance?
Now, it turns out in all arenas, it's a somewhat complicated question, and there aren't really good answers. There aren't really good definitions.
No, if you try to say, like, can you make a mathematical definition of what makes a game balanced? Not really. I mean, there might be some for some cases or whatever, right? So we need to move on with this panel. We can't spend all our whole time doing semantics. So
what is a game anyway? What's the definition of the word game?
Yeah, we're not going to put that in this panel because that's not a panel that Rim made. He puts that in, right? But we are going to make up a definition of balance for the purposes of this panel that I think will satisfy you for whatever, all right? And the definition is this. A balanced game is one in which all players begin with an exactly equal chance of victory, right?
Yep.
Now think about this, right? If you're starting a game, whatever the game starts, and at the beginning you have the same chance of winning as everyone else, then sure, during the course of the game I might get a leg up because I play well or because my opponent makes mistakes, or vice versa. I might get a leg down. My chances of winning might decrease because they played well or I made mistakes. But at the start of the game we had an equal shot. Then the game is balanced, right? Anything they did I could have done, anything I do they could have done, right? And that's a balanced game. Right? So that, you know, even though a game that meets this requirement might not technically be perfectly balanced, right? At least you won't be able to complain and make one of those threads if a game meets this definition. Okay? All right. Is it even possible to
Are there
balance a game?
truly balanced games?
Yeah, I mean, you look, how many games are there? Every single game you go to, multiplayer competitive game, has these threads, all of them, right? So is it even possible? Maybe the reason all these games are imbalanced is because they can't be balanced. Right? Maybe, but actually that's not true. Here's a perfectly balanced game right there.
Rock is not OP.
Rock,
Though I'm sure there's a thread somewhere of someone complaining about it.
Rock feels OP, I know. Right? But the fact is, no, all of these options have a 33.333% chance of winning exactly, right? Every player has the exact same access to all of the options. Rock, paper, scissors is a perfectly balanced game. It's also really boring. Here is another perfectly balanced and perfectly boring game called Goofspiel.
I'm sure you've never heard of it. Has anyone heard of Goofspiel or GOPS?
The one person who listens to our show is in our forum. Great.
None of you have played it, and none of you want to.
No. Goofspiel, if anyone actually wants to learn this game, is the game of pure strategy. It actually is a game of pure strategy. It is interesting to play and learn about if you're like a game designer or trying to balance games or want to make a game of pure strategy. But it's actually really hella boring, and you'll get bored of it in like 5 minutes. Good thing it only takes 5 minutes to learn. You just need a deck of cards and come find me sometime. I'm here for 2 more days, I guess.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah, whatever. But there are a lot of games that incorporate Goofspiel. If you want to play El Grande, is a great game that has a Goofspiel part. And there's a new 2-player game called Raptor, where one person is controlling these adventurers trying to steal dino eggs on a map, and that incorporates a Goofspiel-like mechanic.
It's a 2-player game, competitive, asymmetric. Like the players are one person's the raptor, one person's the people, so it's Clever Girl the game, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. But it incorporates Goofspiel, and that part of it is balanced, right? Here's a perfectly balanced game.
No, not the football part.
No, the coin toss part. The coin toss part is balanced. Assuming the coin is balanced and isn't cheating, and the ref isn't in on some scam or anything like that, a coin toss is balanced. Even though one person gets to call the coin toss and the other person doesn't, it's still a balanced game. Everyone's got a 50-50 shot.
Now, is it only 50-50 because it's a random thing?
Maybe.
Because there's a toy game that a lot of game designers like to use called Guess a Digit of Pi. A toy game to illustrate a point. The coin toss is random. It could be heads or tails. It's literally random. But Guess a Digit of Pi is not random. Pi is a known quantity. There's no randomness at all in the game Guess a Digit of Pi. But if we play right now, what's the 4,097th digit of pi?
How do you know that I'm not someone who's memorized every digit of pi?
Have you?
No.
There we go. It effectively becomes random, even though it is not random as far as the players are concerned, and thus it is effectively 100% balanced.
All right. So anyway, there's your symmetric games, but we don't care about symmetric games. We care about asymmetric games. You're having fun just thinking about this, right? Symmetric games are all boring. Coin toss, rock, paper, scissors, right? Asymmetric games are fun. Right? We see different things matching up against each other to see which one comes out on top, right? All the games that you play are probably asymmetric in one way or another.
Yep.
And that's where all the fun comes from. Let's see hands for Superman. No? Hands for Saitama? Okay. Oh.
Duh. Because obviously he kills everything in one punch.
What is Saitama? I guess Saitama's kryptonite. I guess he doesn't need it, according to this audience.
One punch.
I guess there's no kryptonite for Saitama. Is that what it is? Okay. I guess Saitama could go find kryptonite so fast if he knew. Yeah. Anyway, you guys got it right.
We've played extreme examples of this. There's a board game we've talked about before, Dune. Like Frank Herbert's Dune, the board game. It is the most asymmetric, crazy game I've ever seen. That's it feels way unbalanced and crazy, and yet it is actually pretty well balanced in the end.
Yeah. Anyway, so we got to balance these asymmetric games. Kind of hard to balance when Saitama is so OP, right? But before we try to balance the OP Saitama, let's try to balance something else. Turn order, right? Most games, even if they seem like they're symmetric, someone goes first, and that makes the game imbalanced and asymmetrical. Obviously, in tic-tac-toe, whoever goes first can, if they play properly, guarantee no worse than a tie, and win if the other person makes even one mistake.
Yep.
And whoever goes second can, at best, guarantee a tie against a perfect player, and will otherwise lose if they make a single mistake. It's unfair. The first player has a huge advantage. Going first is OP, right? But there are other, right? Now, how do we fix this? Well, sometimes you can have a tournament. In chess, someone goes first, and that's slightly unfair. Right? So when you go to a chess tournament, you play against someone multiple times, and some games you go first, and some games they go first, and you add them together. So one game of chess is not balanced, but a little set of chess, right, where you play a few games becomes balanced because you take turns going first.
Yep.
Pretty good, right? Compensate for going first, right? In Puerto Rico, going first is actually kind of a big advantage. So what they do is
not in 3-player. You want to go last.
Well, you go in 3-player, right? Go last because they compensate. The first player starts the game with an indigo, and some of the other players who go later in the turn start the game with a corn, and it ends up so that corn is actually, it's worth it to go last to get that corn.
Now you'll notice, if you ever look at the rules, especially like older 90s, 2000s German-style board games, they'll always have some rule about which player starts the game. They'll say something like, the oldest player starts, the youngest player starts. That's turned into more of a toy. Like I saw one game that just said, the player who has most recently sacrificed something goes first.
The last player who to visit the ocean goes first.
Yep. Right. But the oldest, youngest player, what that really meant in those days, but if the oldest player is supposed to go first, then the oldest player really meant the most experienced player in your group.
So if a game says oldest player goes first, most experienced player goes first, it's telling you that the game designer believes that going first is a disadvantage. Right? Because the most experienced player going first, they want to balance the game out. If it says youngest player goes first, that means going first is an advantage, right? To give the weakest player who doesn't have a lot of experience a slight boost to balance things out.
So that was a way to use the differences in the players themselves to mitigate the unfairness of turn order rather than changing the game.
Yep. Another way to fix the balance out the going first is to reorder the turns as the game goes on. This is Kalis. There's a lot of games that do this. Power Grid does this really well. Some other games out there, but Agricola, you can choose, you can take the go first action, right? But during the game of Kalis, as the game goes on, every round, whoever stops doing stuff first is gonna go do stuff first in the next round, right? So the turns keep getting reordered, so that randomness of going first in the first round doesn't really mean much by the time the game ends.
Now this is interesting and extra important because a lot of games, for convenience, will go clockwise. Like there'll be something to determine who goes first, but then the game just goes clockwise. Sitting to the left or the right of a particular player in that order could be an advantage or a disadvantage. So it's not just reordering who goes first, but a lot of these games, you'll know if they're well designed, if they reorder arbitrarily, independent of the physical location of the players.
All right, now we spent a few minutes talking about just balancing who goes first. What happens when we try to balance something more complicated, right? If we spent all those slides to talk about just balancing going first in a game that was otherwise symmetrical, how the hell are you gonna balance this shit, right? Well, it's kind of hard, right? It's much harder than you think, but there is you might not be able to perfectly balance this, but there is something you can do, and that is to make all of the options viable. Right, way back in the day in Italy, some centuries ago, there's a guy named Pareto, an economist, and he came up with this like Pareto efficiency frontier thing that has to do with money and spending, and you don't give a shit about that. But the thing that he came up with is a useful mechanism for illustrating how to make all options in a game viable, right? So here we go. Right? I made this as simple as possible, right? You got your Protoss, they're strong and slow. Terrans, kind of in the middle. Zerg, fast and weak.
Now see how they form a line? Because every one of these, you have to give up something to get something else. They are all different in some way.
Right, there's all of these three things are viable options in the game. They might not be balanced. It might be that speed is just way better to have than strength, in which case Zerg would be OP, but they're at least viable options, right? Maybe you want to be stronger than Zerg, but you don't want to be as slow as Protoss. Well, Terran is a viable option, right? It is stronger yet slower than Zerg, right? Let's try to add a new race to StarCraft and see if we can at least make it a viable option, right? Well, I don't know if anyone knows Star Control. We add in some Spathy here, right? Well, the Spathy, you know, compared to Terrans, they're a viable option. They're faster yet weaker. Okay, but compared to Zerg, Zergs are both faster and stronger than Spathy. There is no reason to ever pick Spathy if we introduce them into the game at this level of, right? There's no reason for them to be there. If you pick them, why?
They're just a suboptimal option.
They're just worse, so we say that they're below the frontier, right? They're below this line, right? If they were somehow above the line, we would redraw the line to incorporate them, and one of these other options, right, would go under the line. Here, let's add another race, the Merfolk, right? The Merfolk are stronger and faster than all three of the existing StarCraft options, so if they existed, the line would move, and the line would just be the Merfolk dot, and all of the three existing StarCraft options would be pointless. Why do they even exist? Just play Merfolk, they're OP, right? So if you just use this, right, alone, you might not be able to balance all of your options, but at least you can only include viable options and eliminate options that there's no reason that anyone would ever want to use them.
Yep, so someone will pick every option at some point in play because there is some reason to somewhere.
Right, they're not completely invalid. There isn't another option that's just better, right? Sometimes, though, see, it's not as easy as just strength and speed, right? Obviously, there's a lot more going on there. You got costs of units, you've got how the Terran bases can lift up and move around, the Zerg can go...
Pick some MOBA. How many dimensions are there to any given character, let alone a team composition?
Right. It's even, with all those dimensions, it becomes hard to even figure this out on paper in advance. Like, almost impossibly hard, right? And that's why you get to give the game devs a break, right? It's not easy to balance this, right? Okay, now sometimes it is easy to balance this, right? I don't know if anyone can see this or knows Hearthstone, but on the left you've got this card. It's even if you don't know Hearthstone, you can understand what's going on here. You got a card, it's a 3 mana 1/4 taunt that's a beast. Right over there is another real Hearthstone card, it's a 3 mana 3/4 taunt that's a beast. It's just better, right? There is no reason. These are actually a whole bunch of options that are 3 mana cards that have taunt that are stronger than the one on the left, right? It's like they're all just obviously better to everybody. There's no reason for the one on the left to even be in the game, and it's so obvious that even Hearthstone players who don't know about Pareto made this JPEG. I was able to just download it. I didn't have to Photoshop it myself, okay? And here's hard mode. Will this even balance? Is it even humanly possible? Can an AI even do this? Right, it's like, I don't even know what you're gonna do here, right? Will this balance? Well, let's go back to our definition of balance, right? It's a game in one in which all players begin with an exactly equal chance of victory. Now, I'm gonna present to you an argument here. I don't necessarily support this argument, but I want you to all noodle on this. And the question is, when does the game begin? Most people think this is when the game begins. Round 1, fight. No matter which character I choose, no matter which character you choose, we should have an equal chance of winning starting when the guy says fight, right? And that's when people complain about imbalance. What if I told you the game started here, right?
With Mortal Kombat, the first game.
You chose, if you choose the shitty character, the game already started. That was your first mistake. This game is perfectly balanced. Right? Assuming the game starts here, it's perfectly balanced no matter how OP the characters are or how weak they are or whatever, right? It's your fault if you choose the weak character. If you choose the strong character, you're smart, right? That's a good play versus a bad play if you believe that the game starts here and not on the next screen when the guy says fight.
Yep. I mean, you both had the option to choose Johnny Cage. I don't know if he was better or not. I don't remember Mortal Kombat 1.
Right. Obviously, if you have a mirror match, well, at least you got the 50-50 shot now no matter what. Right?
Now, even if this is balanced, I mean, Fox only Final Destination, no items. Is that fun?
Is it fun?
Is that what you want out of Smash Brothers?
I don't know. All right. So because of this, the world has created these tier lists, right? Now, the thing is, there is a tier list somewhere that is true, right? The characters are not perfectly balanced in these games or any, I'm using fighting games as an example because it's really easy to understand, but this obviously applies to every asymmetrical game. Your different decks in Magic, your different races in StarCraft, your different heroes in your MOBAs, everything, right? All of the same stuff applies. There is a tier list that is true. Some characters are better than others, and players, because the game developers aren't telling you this, attempt to figure out which ones are top tier and which ones are low tier.
Now, they usually only determine this by just looking at statistics or just guessing based on their own experience.
Or sometimes they figure things out like, aha, this guy's punch does this much damage, this character's kick does this much damage, they're this fast, their hitboxes are this big. They sort of try to use empirical evidence, but they're never perfect. And part of the reasons they're never perfect is people don't necessarily play all the characters, right? A lot of people don't put the effort into mastering and figuring out all the, eccentricities of all the characters to really get the most out of them. Right? There's a lot of things going on here. So although there is a tier list somewhere that is true, the ones you see online are not necessarily 100% accurate. That's why they often change frequently as players discover new things. Right? So you can't necessarily trust them. But if you did have the true tier list, you would only want to pick ones in the top tier because otherwise you're just giving yourself a disadvantage.
Now you see this in Overwatch. They talk a lot when they rebalance the game around how there are characters who end up being, quote, situational, meaning they're only useful in very specific circumstances in the game. And while their goal is to prevent that from occurring, because then those characters are unsatisfying, it's either always play this character when X is true, otherwise never play this character. No matter what changes they make, there's always someone who's situational.
Yeah, this is where we get, we can't go too deep, right? We only got an hour, but games have different maps, they have different, scenarios, right? And based on those, when those things change, suddenly different options become viable. Maybe in Smash Brothers, in a match with a bunch of items, one character becomes better, and a match without a lot of items, another one becomes better. I don't know, I haven't played Smash in years. All right? There's a great article on Kotaku very recently about someone who's basically said, tier lists are full of bullshit, right? And they were someone who played Blanca and was like, hey, look, Blanca is low tier, but no one tries Blanca. There's not a lot of guides online on how to play Blanca. I practiced a lot of Blanca, and I got pretty good. People didn't know how to play against me because Blanca was so weird. They hadn't seen what Blanca does. They couldn't guess my timing and my positioning, right? Maybe Blanca's better, maybe Blanca's worse. We don't know.
But this is the problem, the danger of conventional wisdom. A lot of gamers will experience some negative situation in a game, and they will misunderstand the true cause of that situation, and thus they will, they play a lot of games, they feel like they have some expertise on games, and they will make judgments about games. The common knowledge of the community of a game might say that this character is underpowered and no one should play them, but then that common knowledge reinforces that meta loop because people only play the tier list that the first person wrote one night randomly and put online.
All right, so I highly recommend this article. Just go to Kotaku and search for tier list. It was really great reading. All right. Here's another thing you got to balance for.
Now, no one chooses Voldo.
Rim chooses Voldo.
No, Voldo.
That's why I put Voldo there, because you choose Voldo every time.
No, I did not choose Voldo. Voldo chose me. I'm not good at fighting games in general.
I'm not either. I'm only slightly better than Rim.
Yeah, Scott can beat me in Street Fighter jab only no matter what I do.
But I can't, if anyone here actually knows how to play Street Fighter, I won't hit you even one time.
But in Soul Calibur 2, for whatever reason, I played all the characters, I was okay with them, but Voldo just worked for me. Just
hey, get away from me. All right, but yeah, power versus difficulty, right? Voldo is all weird, right? He's got weird controls, he looks weird on the screen, he's hard to play with, right? And so normally you would think, people don't play Voldo because he's weird, right? People play Ryu because he's straightforward and easy. Everyone understands Ryu, you can master Ryu, right? But you have to balance this out. The easy character to play should be not so powerful, and the character that's hard to play should be more powerful, right? Like this, right? We're assuming power includes the general full power encompassing all of the character's abilities, speed, damage, everything, and difficulty is how hard they are to use.
Like Overwatch is an example. Symmetra is a character who is pretty easy to play. People talk about how her aimbot, because she doesn't actually have to aim to shoot at people. And then Genji, the ninja, is extremely hard to play because you gotta be jumping around, flying and flanking people, and it's really difficult.
Right, the very first slide we showed, Counter-Strike, the AWP is a really hard gun to use. You get one shot and then you have to reload it. You have to aim exactly right, but you'll kill him in one shot if you hit him, right? Other guns are really easy to use, spray and pray, right? But they're not so strong. They don't kill him in one shot. You got to fill him full of a lot of bullets if you're spraying and praying, and that you balance it out. Things that are hard to do should be more powerful, and things that are easy to do should be less powerful. This causes some problems. Problem number one, anything that is hard to use and isn't powerful enough is useless. It's useless land, right? You'll see the similarities between this and the Pareto thing, right? Anything you make in the game that is hard to do, that isn't strong enough, just no one does. Why is it even in the game, all right? Then you got things over here. This is cheap land, right? People complain all the time. That's so cheap, oh my God, right? I played Soul Calibur since it was called like Soul Edge, and I would play Siegfried because I like knights, and all I would do is go, and that worked on most people who didn't know what they were doing.
That's Soul Calibur too. For me, it was Raphael with the ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba.
Right, and people who know how to play the game are gonna kick my ass, but someone who just picked up a controller is gonna get hit on the head twice and then flipped on their back, and then I'll stomp on their face.
So you have a character or a choice that is very easy to be reasonably good at without a lot of practice, without a lot of training, without a lot of skill necessarily.
Right, and this is what people mean when they say that's cheap. It's inexpensive. It didn't cost a lot to do this, yet it was very strong, and those things make for very unsatisfying play experiences. People get upset when your game has these things in it. Here's the real problem. Nobody cares in the pro world how hard something is to do because they're pros, right? They'll go to any length to master any difficulty.
They'll spend 1,000 hours to be 1% better at the hardest to use character.
Right, so it doesn't matter how easy or hard it is to use a character. All that matters is how powerful they are. They will use the most powerful character whether it's easy or hard to use. And this means that when you make your game, you want to make a difficulty level where some characters are easy, going up to hard, the easy ones are weak, the hard ones are strong. That means that in pro play, only the hard characters to use will ever be used, and the easy character you use won't see pro play. They're not competitively viable, they're just not strong enough.
Think about bots like in Taz runs or aim bots or cheat bots. The bots are basically doing the best possible inputs for the character. If there's a character that requires frame perfect timing to do its moves, but if you do those moves, you are guaranteed to win, then bots will always do those moves and never fail. You have to imagine how your game will be balanced if literally everyone playing is a 100% expert at your game. Right. And even worse, if anyone in that game is not a 100% expert, then they basically don't have access to these options up at the top of this graph.
Right. So as a developer, you have to be aware, you have to make this choice. Do you want all of the character choices in the game to be competitively viable so that all players will be happy that their character has competitive viability? Or are you going to provide this difficulty curve and then accept the fact that only the characters that are very hard to play with are going to be competitively viable and none of the other ones will be seen on Twitch during tournaments ever because they're not strong enough? There's no way to get them both. You can't do both. You just can't be done.
In fact, look at, so Overwatch, if you might have noticed, on the console versus the PC, some of the characters act differently. They're balanced differently. Because it turns out that a big turret that auto-aims and shoots around the map is not useful in the competitive tier. It's not useful against skilled players, but against baby nubs with controllers instead of a mouse and keyboard, it was insta-death. They had to make the turrets weaker in the console because the skill input into the game was lower.
If you don't notice, Overwatch is like the only game Rim has been playing for like the past 6 months or whatever.
I mean, it replaced Action Quake 2, Weapons Factory, Tribes 2. That's just my new game.
All right, okay. So, when you want to determine balance, or when game developers these days determine, right? Because remember, it's so complicated to figure out if something is balanced. What people do these days is they just make their game, and then they look at data to figure out if it's balanced after the fact, right? And then they tweak and tweak and tweak until they see this 50-50 win rate. Oh, the magical 50-50 win rate, right? They'll always tell you, oh, that character is not OP. They're seeing win rates under 50% on the ladder. Oh, that's not OP. It's only got a 52% win rate, right? Oh, that does have a 70% win rate. We're going to nerf it, right? And they use this 50-50, thinking that every option should win about half the time, and that means it's balanced. And that's kind of true, but it's also kind of not true.
Well, because every option, we're also got to look at the player. The players have to have a 50-50 shot.
So, this is balanced. Michael Jordan wins 100% of the time, almost, right? I mean, he won 6 championships. I don't see anyone else doing that, right? That's balance. Not 50-50 win rate, but better player wins 100% of the time.
Now
that is balance.
Already that gets hard. What do you mean by better player?
What do you mean by better player?
And how do you quantify that?
That's right. When you're a game developer, you have to decide what skills are you looking for? What makes a better player, right? Can you identify the Michael Jordan of your game? Can you point them out? Look at games that are very well balanced, like basketball, or the most balanced game of all, tennis, right? When you look at tennis, right, as long as they're not injured, right, the same people win over and over and over again. Rod Laver, Roger Federer, Serena Williams, they win and win and win because the game is so balanced and they're better than everyone else and they have more skills, so they win. Right? There's no luck in the game messing them up. There's no, oh, I chose the wrong racket, so I lose. There's none of that nonsense, right? Balanced game, right? You want to look, if you're the player's making, if you're making Overwatch, right? Say that person's the Michael Jordan of Overwatch. I want to see them win 100% of the time or close to it, no matter which character they choose. Right? If you see them losing with one character and winning with another, well, then obviously there's something going on there. But if they're winning all the time with every character, now you know you got balance because the player's skill is what's determining victory and not the character selection. Right? Is this balanced?
I mean, we could all compete in this race right now.
Right? Right? I mean, disregarding drugs and all those sorts of things, we're not getting into that today. Right? Is this balanced? And I propose to you again, the same question I asked before, is when does the game start? If this starts when the gun goes off, obviously it's balanced, right? They're gonna call a false start if someone gets a head start even. It's that balanced. But when did the race start?
You can tell the people at this MAGFest who go into that computer arcade and they sit down in front of that Quake 1 machine and start playing Quake 1. If you played Quake 1 and Quake 2 and Quake 3, and I farted, I'm really sorry about that. And then you play Overwatch.
You got no other way to spice up the panel, you just gotta fart?
Then you go and play Overwatch, and you play against someone who has never played an FPS before. You have got a huge advantage because you started playing that game essentially a decade or two before them.
Sure.
I warned you.
Right? But it's not just when were you born, right? Being born at the right time for video games matters a lot, right? But also, what DNA you have, right? Even if I took all the performance-enhancing drugs in the world, I'm not gonna beat Usain Bolt in any race ever. Even when he's an old man, I'm not gonna beat him in any race ever. Unless he breaks his leg like in 10 places, and then he'll get one of those mechanical legs and beat me again. He could probably beat me on the one leg, right? There's no way it's happening, right? How do you balance for this?
Now think even in the real world,
and
right?
do you balance for this?
We talked about how that as the difficulty increases for a character or for a thing, you have to assume that in competitive play, everyone will take the most difficult option if it is the most powerful. If there's money involved and the game is selecting the players to play the game in the first place, you're gonna find the people who have all the best natural advantages and start from there. Non-viable is anyone who starts below that tier.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there's one way to balance for this. Weight classes. Now, weight classes in boxing are one specific, right? But anything that is sort of like this, right? You separate players based on their DNA in some way, right? You know, this is why it's not super sexist to have women's tennis and men's tennis, right?
But it would be to have women's and men's video gaming.
That would be, yes, very much so, right? It's Serena Williams will even just tell you, like, there's no even point in asking how she would do against the men. She's like, yeah, I'd get my ass kicked by like number 100 or something, right? And no one even discusses it because it's pointless. Just like no one discusses would Floyd Mayweather beat Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali weighed 100 more pounds than Floyd Mayweather. I weigh as much as Floyd Mayweather. I'm just flab instead of muscle. Obviously, he'd kick my ass, probably have my teeth in the other side of MAGFest. But Muhammad Ali versus Mayweather, it's not even a question, right? Because Muhammad Ali would punch him once and he'd fall over, right? Because he was 100 pounds of muscle. Think about how much that is. That's like a whole bag of sand. Holy, 2 bags of sand maybe. Holy shit. Right? So they separate people in boxing because even they have lots and lots of weight classes, right? Light middleweight, heavy middleweight, featherweight. They separate so many because they matter so much, right?
They have to have a lot of these classes because the more granular you are, the more you can go toward that 50-50 win rate within each class. If the weight classes were big, literally everyone in the sport would be 1 nanogram under the maximum of their given weight class.
Yep. All right. So there are things like weight classes, right? We got age groups, right? This is one of the only nerdy games that actually does anything like weight classes is Pokemon. Both the video game and the card game separate people into age groups. Part of it is because you don't want the 40-year-old bald guy to play Pokemon with the 3-year-old kids. That's just wrong for many reasons. But also because it would be unfair to have like some adults, you know, who have like tons of money and tons of time and tons of, you know, have learned about EV training to play against 6-year-olds who don't know what EV training is and just like Pikachu because they're cute. Right?
And you might say, who would do that? You're at MAGFest, you played games with some people. I would do that.
That's right. Right? So this is good, but not enough games are doing this. Right? This Pokemon is the only example I could find of a pro, any kind of esport, right, where they separate people in any kind of way into some sort of classification to where DNA or age or any of these unbalanceable things gets evened out, right? If you want to be Hearthstone champion, it doesn't matter if you're 100 or if you're 10, you're all in it together, right? There's no separation whatsoever, and it's kind of wrong. There should be like a Hearthstone Kids Championship and a Hearthstone Senior Tour and whatever, right? It's like it only makes sense, but they just don't do it when they should. Right? Overwatch Senior Tour for people like, it was a Counter-Strike team that showed up with all old people on it, right? They shouldn't have to play against those 20-year-old kids, right? They should be a separate group, right? Because their arms are slow, just like mine. I should play against them.
We should join those
I'd have
leagues.
A chance for once.
We're old enough.
Right, we should. All right, we need this to happen more, right? One way to balance games that hasn't been done, division based on DNA, right? This is how games have resorted to because they don't divide on DNA. They do matchmaking. Matchmaking.
Well, partly because your computer can't just get your DNA when you play.
I guess that's true. I guess I could tell Steam that I'm 50 when I want to look at some bad games, right?
I'm 104.
Sure, right? But matchmaking has improved a lot since the olden days, but it still has problems.
Now, it's even worse than that. Good matchmaking, you think, oh, if matchmaking gets better, then the tiers even out, the 50-50 win rate appears. But really good matchmaking can actually make games really unsatisfying, both to watch or to play. Because if you always have a 50% chance of victory, because no matter what, you are always paired with someone who is almost identical to you at skill, you will never feel like you're progressing. You'll never experience a blowout in either direction. You'll never experience like the game as one would expect it. Every game will be this perfect draw that goes into perfect overtime and ends on randomness at the end.
Right. What we want is we want Michael Jordan to win all the time, and we want everyone else who has to play against Michael Jordan to lose all the time, right? And matchmaking doesn't give you that. Matchmaking gives you a Michael Jordan that wins half the time, which is you can't find the Michael Jordan now because they're winning half the time. Yeah. Right? You can't, there's no dynasties in esports as long as you have matchmaking and ladders, right?
Well, it'll come out at the end. If you have enough players in the pool, then all the way in the tails, it'll be a 50-50 win rate until the players are sorted. Remember, ranked, we talk about competitive games, meaning we have a way to rank the players. First place, second place, third place. Once someone is number one, they'll beat everyone 100% of the time, and the number two person will beat everyone under them 100% of the time. Number three person will beat everyone under them 100% of the time.
Another problem that happens a lot is that because a lot of these are team games and you're not always with the same team, and they only judge you based on wins and losses and not based on individual ability. Like, I'm not that great at Rocket League, right? I'm basically slightly better than basic. I can like dribble well and move around well. I can't do anything in the air. Like I go, right? But there would be a lot of games where I would score 5 goals and lose because the other team had 2 crappy players and 1 player better than me. And it's like, it would just count as a loss and my rank would go down because all they look at is wins and losses and not individual performances. So even though I was the second best player in the game, it was not accurately reflecting my abilities in the ranking, which is slightly dissatisfying.
A couple of seasons ago in Overwatch, I random solo queued all my competitive like ranking matches and I got stuck in the woods. I mean, I was like low silver, so I was playing against these bronze tier kids. They don't know Diva can fly. They're just like spinning around in circles, and yet somehow I would still lose because 5 people on my team are like that.
So matchmaking is sort of like the thing that is keeping the, the weight classes out of esports, right? And it's good, but it's not perfect, right? Okay, handicaps, right? There are a lot of games out there that have handicaps, and I have not seen any video games or card games or any nerdy games use handicaps. Now, a handicap is most often used in not a directly competitive game, but in a game of individual achievement, like golf or bowling, right? Any game where you're playing against yourself. Right? When you play golf, it doesn't matter what the other golfer does, right? They're just standing next to you and drinking beer while you swing, right? It doesn't matter. You're playing to be better than you were the last time. So you adjust your score based on your average score. And if you do a lot better than you do on average, that's considered a self-improvement because you're really competing against your own abilities. Are you getting better at golf?
So all the handicap does is lets you play against basically your perfect opponent, yourself, while the other player is playing against their perfect opponent, themselves, and between the two of you, you'll have a 50-50 50-50 chance of winning the game.
Right.
So the competition between you two at getting better is itself a competition that is fair.
Right, so if I play against Tiger Woods at golf, he's got a 0 handicap probably, and I've got like plus a zillion, right? But if I do better than my handicap by like 10 strokes, and he does worse than his handicap by 1 stroke, we could actually say I did better than Tiger Woods, because since I last played golf, I did way better than I usually do, and he did worse than he usually does, so I did better at improving myself than he did, all right? So any games, video games, board games, whatever, that involve improving yourself and not directly competing against someone else for like, whoever gets the most points right now, really need to incorporate handicaps as a balancing mechanism, and this allows players of widely divergent skill levels to play against each other in a meaningful and satisfying way, and it's just not used.
Now notice it does not help us find the best player, and it doesn't help us do that ranking. All it does is help us ensure that the games that are played are satisfying and feel meaningful to the players.
Right, the point is to get rid of those threads, right? Those threads at the start. You're not gonna have that thread if the game says, congratulations, you beat Tiger Woods, right? The thread won't be there, right? I promise you. Okay, here's another imbalance. The imbalance of cash.
I played Magic as a kid. I never won Magic tournaments because I didn't have enough money.
Right? As much as games are an escape from the real world, we can't keep the real world out of them completely as much as we try, right? Also because games cost money to make, right? So here's a penny arcade comic about a game called Hellgate London, and I guess Bill Gates is the best Hellgate London player on earth, right? Because you just buy all the good stuff and win, and nothing else really matters, right? How do we balance this out, though? Is it really fair for me to play against Bill Gates at Hellgate London, right? No, that's really unsatisfying, right? How are we gonna fix this? Right? Well, one way is you can have a salary cap, right? That's what all sports do except baseball, right? And without that salary cap in baseball, the Yankees often just spend a shit ton of money to get all the best players and win or come close to winning, and it's kind of unfair.
Now, hockey is interesting because they've relatively recently instituted a salary cap, and what you found is that in the old days, once a team got good, they'd have something called a dynasty. The same good team would stick together, and different teams would play very different hockey. Now in the salary cap era, bit by bit, the teams are all sort of homogenizing. Games are very similar. It doesn't really matter who's playing in many cases, because anyone who gets too good, if a team gets too good, those players are more expensive and they end up moving somewhere else. You're constantly churning the game back to 0-0 ties in overtime.
Right, now this creates other kinds of problems because these sports, this is someone's salary, right? Imagine if you went to work and the boss said, sorry, you played really well this year, but I can't give you a raise because we're at the max. That's the cap. Can't give anyone any more money, right? The baseball union is very strong, and that's why they don't have a salary cap, right? Salary caps are things owners like, and they're things that team fans like because they want to see balanced play, but they're very bad and very unfair for players and labor. So if you care about labor and people being paid fairly for their work, I know it's hard to feel bad for millionaires, but the owners are billionaires, so don't feel too bad for them, right?
Now, why do they want balanced play?
Cap.
Here's an aside. Why do they want balanced play? They want balanced play because the game has to have a chance of going in either direction all the way until the end so that everyone sees all the ads for the entire game. You don't want people turning off the football game because it's a blowout.
Yeah, you don't want people at the end of the season not watching anymore, right? Owners love these salary caps because they make more money paying players less, and they have the support of fans who like the salary caps because the play is more exciting. The only person who doesn't want salary caps are people who see what's going on and players who are going to get paid less, all right? Some games you can't even play if you don't got money, all right? If you want to play polo, you need a goddamn horse. You know how much a horse is?
What was that phone game, Send Me to Heaven?
Anyone here got a horse? No, not one person has a horse.
There's a phone game, I think it was called Send Me to Heaven, and you can play it. Like, any of you could play it. I don't know if you'd want to risk it. You throw your phone as hard as you can into the air, and whoever threw their phone the highest wins.
I guess you win if you have a jet. You can drop the phone out of the jet and then catch it on the ground somewhere. But I guess if you got a jet, you can afford a new phone.
But like, as a kid, I had a gaming PC. So I spent my entire childhood playing these games. A lot of people don't have access to a gaming PC.
Yeah, my coworkers were talking the other day about like, oh, they went to the internet cafe. And I'm like, whoa, how lucky was I to have a gaming PC with a GPU, right? It's like, it's not just horses, not this ridiculous example, right? Some people don't have gaming PC, right? How do we balance for this? Right? How do we balance for no horse?
Communism.
Right? How do we balance for no magic cards, right? When you go to the store and see people playing magic, those are the kids in town who have money, right? The people who are winning have even more money, right?
So I learned about a crazy group of our friends, like just this weekend. They formed a magic cabal to solve this problem among themselves. They all ceded control of all the magic cards each of them owned to a pool and agreed that that pool is available to all of them to check out cards and to build decks and to play Magic. And then they have other people taking those cards, buying and selling them on the open market and taking all those profits to buy more cards into the pool. There's a Magic corporation.
Right, now that works for them, but it doesn't solve the problem for everyone, right?
It also makes them more powerful individually than all the people who aren't doing that unless those people also have money.
All right.
Aside from the money aspect.
All right, so ways that we can solve this money problem, right? Money
doesn't
weight
feel
classes,
right.
no, this is wrong. You do not want to go to the Magic tournament and say poor kids on the right, rich kids on the left. That is wrong, right? We cannot do this. Now, it would balance. It would balance if you had poor people Magic, rich people Magic, but obviously we're not doing this. This is the wrongest of the wrong.
Actually,
right?
you know the way you do it is you choose your monthly fee for like Blizzard, and then you're just whatever number you pay per month, that's the tier you're in.
No, we're not doing this. I'm just pointing out that this exists. It technically would balance it, and how wrong it is, just look at it. I only need to show you one slide. I don't need to explain why this is wrong and is never going to happen, right? Okay, another way we can fix this. This would work. Your Magic deck must cost $50 or less. That would work. That would be great. WotC would not be happy with this, right? They would not like it all because you'd get enough cards to make a deck and then you'd stop spending, right? So this is like the reverse salary cap, right? Oh yeah, you can only charge this much for baseball tickets, right? So that way, instead of saying that the Yankees can't spend more money because there's a cap, saying no, you're not allowed to make more money. You already made as much money as you're allowed to make this season. You have to start giving tickets away for free because you already reached the revenue limit, right? That's not gonna happen, although it would be fucking awesome. That would be the bet, right? Imagine it's like you come here and it's like, all the video game companies, we made as much money as we're allowed to make this year. The rest of the games we give away for free because it's just excess inventory.
You know, so there are car racing leagues that are literally, you can spend $400 and we're gonna race these cars.
They're awesome.
We could do that with Magic.
You could do that with Magic.
$20.
But
to
it would
get your
never
deck
be.
betting?
It would never be official, right?
No.
That's the main problem with it, right? It's like it'd be satisfying. You can do it locally. You know, you could, right? But it's not going to count. No, the world champion of Magic is not in pauper mode, right? And it never will be.
It'd be like NASCAR.
I wish it was. That would be great.
NASCAR with the limiters. This is the video card. You can't have a better one.
Yeah, could be. Anyway, so we still haven't solved this money balance problem, right? Here's one way to solve the money balance problem, right? Ice hockey, as a giant conglomeration of many organizations, understands that ice hockey is hella expensive to play. Not as expensive as polo, but probably more expensive than Magic, right?
I mean, you gotta live in the north. You gotta have ice.
You gotta have an ice rink.
You gotta have shoes with knives on them.
Right? You gotta have your stick breaks, you gotta buy new ones. Your feet grow, you gotta get more skates. You gotta get pads, you gotta get nets, you gotta have time. It's very, very expensive to play ice hockey, but they know that the game of ice hockey won't survive unless children get interested in it and play it, and there's not enough only among the rich kids, and it would be wrong, right, because they have morals, for only rich kids to play ice hockey. They don't want it to become polo. So they have organizations like this. Donate your skates, we'll give them to someone so they can learn to skate, right? If you are poor or don't have enough, or at least not rich enough to play ice hockey and you want to, there are people out there who will help you and hook you up with skates, sticks, whatever it is that you need, teach you how to play, get you coaching, get you something. It might not be what the rich kids get, but if you have talent, guess what? Someone else is gonna come along and help you out some more, right?
And we're all at MAGFest. We all ostensibly in this room care about gaming. It's a big hobby. It's a big part of our lives, especially because you're not in the arcade. You're in a panel room listening to us right now. So you must care in some way about gaming as a whole. Gaming as a whole could do a much better job reaching out to people who don't have the privileges. The fact that we're in this room at MAGFest, a lot of kids can't afford to go to any conventions.
All right, I've never seen an organization, and I don't have the time to start one, that's like, I would support one though, that was like, give gaming PCs to kids that can't afford them, give Magic cards to kids that can't afford them, right? Someone out there start it, quick.
Yeah.
Someone on YouTube, if not anyone here. I know no one here has a horse, you probably don't have the money, but someone out there can probably start these organizations, right? Because we need them, right? Because esports is becoming like a rich kids only deal, right? Can you have a gaming PC or not, right? Okay, obviously there are imbalances of all these other things too, but we've only got an hour, right? But people born in countries that don't have good internet connections have a severe disadvantage at esports. Pings, costing more money for the ISPs is not fair, right? People of different races, different genders face discrimination and harassment, and they can't play the game as much. They can't go to tournaments as much.
Or there's a psychological cost to playing the game because of those factors.
Right, there are all these things, right? I know probably every other panel at MAGFest talks about these things, but they're probably not mentioning that these cause imbalances in games that are not complained about in those threads. No one ever says, they say, I can't win at Hearthstone, this stupid Jade Druid. No one ever says it's unfair, I can't win at Hearthstone because I'm not a white person, right? It's unfair. You don't have the same advantage. How many people, you look at the Hearthstone World Championship, it's mostly white dudes, mostly, right? There's reasons for that, these reasons. Okay, all right, what have we learned here? How much time? We've never done this panel before. What's the
remember,
timing?
this was the trial run. We're doing this for real next week in San Antonio.
All right, we got 10. I need to add 5 more minutes to this panel.
You caught me. I had a few anecdotes I was going to give, but you were like, no, puff, go.
I was worried that we weren't going to have enough time.
We'll tell the anecdotes. So the moral of this is that this is a really complicated area and we don't have good answers for you.
Right, okay, so number one, balance is really, really hard. Like, you don't understand how hard it is. Remember the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 screen, right? It is really hard to balance a game beforehand. It's hard to balance it afterhand, right? It's so difficult, right, when a game has any measure of complexity that it may be impossible, and we don't have computers that can do it for us yet. So you just sort of accept the fact that the games are not always going to be perfectly balanced when they're asymmetrical games, and live with it and breathe and don't start a thread unless it's really egregious.
Now, it's even worse than that in one sense, because some of you are probably thinking, oh, but these matchmaking systems and neural networks and AIs, they'll eventually be able to throw enough computing power and data at these problems to really balance things. The fallacy there is that neural networks, machine learning, AI, all these things, they encode the implicit biases of the data with which they were seeded. If there are imbalances in society, and society generates gamers, and then we look at the data from gamers to balance games, we're going to balance based on those original societal injustices.
So yeah, it's hard, right? Give people a break. Okay, so what should developers do? Number one, developers do need to try harder. Right? There's a lot of games we saw that were imbalanced and could be balanced much better in all aspects, right? If your gamers can see that it's unbalanced and make a huge thread with thousands of posts right away, why does it take you a month to fix this? How did it even happen in the first place? Did you even play test this?
Or developers can go another route, and like Overwatch does this, some games start to do this, where when those threads appear, or when the community is complaining about a particular thing being very powerful, the devs will come out and issue statements like, here's the actual win rate of that character, here's the data, here's the stuff, you kids are all wrong, it's actually underpowered, and you're just whining.
Right. Be open, explain things to the players, tell them the truth, be honest with them, right? You have a competitive community, you gotta let people know what's really going on, right? What was I gonna say?
Petering out here at the end of the panel.
I know, it's 11 in the morning at MAGFest.
I know, I went to bed not that long ago.
The number one thing that companies really need to do, some of them do this, but not enough, is you'll see that there's always those evil strategies that people come up with and discover after the game's been released. You'll see that the same players are discovering these evil strategies over and over again. Hire those assholes, right? If you hire those assholes to play test like 1 week, it takes them like 1 week to find this shit. Let them play test for 1 week right before you release the game. They'll find all that evil shit before you release, and you'll save a lot of face, right? So that shit doesn't get into the wild, and then you have to nerf it after. No one will feel bad if their stuff gets nerfed before they even get it in their hands. Right? So that's what devs got to do. Oh, and also deal with the money issue that we always pointed out. Devs have a lot of money. They can do that.
Devs generally do not have a lot of money.
The big ones. The big ones.
The companies do.
The big ones, not the little ones. The big ones. All right. Okay, players. All right, stop having the sour grapes. Right.
I know you love D.Va, and I know D.Va's cute, but if D.Va's not legitimately in the meta, and you care that much that you even think about the meta, you probably got to stop playing D.Va. You probably got a Pokemon who you think is really cute and you really want to use. That Pokemon
that's
sucks.
Me. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Right, we saw that it's not possible to balance for easiness and difficulty along with competitive viability, right? And we saw that it's really, really hard when you have lots and lots of options with lots and lots of dimensions to make them all balanced, and sometimes you don't want to make them all balanced. So if you care about winning, I'm sorry, it's the reality of the world. You're not going to be able to use your favorite character, your favorite race. You're going to have to use one of the best ones.
Welcome to Valdo Land.
Welcome to the world. That's just how it is. Stop complaining that your character isn't good. Don't make another thread. Just deal with it. All right? And also, if you do care more about using the character that you like, you want to use Blanca no matter how bad they suck, then when you lose, go, oh, I lost, but I played Blanca. Let's see you play Blanca, right? And just change your attitude about that, right? Now that you know the reality of the world, and everything will be a lot happier. You won't be so sour, right? And also, consider the other players that may have unbalances of DNA and money and such, right? When you win against someone or lose against someone, right? Maybe there was an imbalance that you didn't see, even if the game itself was balanced.
Now, another way to go, we talked to this whole panel about what you're balancing for. We're balancing for the fair competition. There are two other ways to balance games that we did not even address because, again, we only got an hour. One way is, are you balancing for spectation and spectacle? Professional sports and eventually esports, in the long run, esports are not going to balance themselves mostly to be perfect, fair, tennis-like competitions. They're going to balance themselves to be the most exciting spectacle for the spectators because that is the only way you're really going to make money.
Yeah, RNG, people always complain about RNG, and now RNG can be balanced as long as everyone has equal odds of everything and equal access, right? The coin toss is 100% RNG, but it's balanced, right? But RNG makes for exciting spectation. It's like, oh, what's gonna be?
There was a great meta-analysis someone posted a while ago, and you can tell this is the beta version of this panel because we didn't make slides for any of this, but it ranked all the major professional sports in the United States based on how much the skill input of the players actually matters. How well balanced is the game? And my favorite sport, ice hockey, not actually that fair or balanced.
Ice hockey is very based on luck, right? Compared to basketball, tennis, baseball, right? Those are all much less luck-based.
I mean, we saw a goal the other night that was phenomenally BS.
Yes, very BS. I didn't even know that was a goal. It was like, come on. Right?
But those experiences, the blowouts, the crazy crap that happens in a spectation game, the players ostensibly don't need to themselves be having a satisfying, fun, or enriching experience. Only the people watching need to, and balancing for that is a whole different proposition.
And it might cause unbalances in the competition to have balances for the spectators to make it exciting.
Now, the third way to go is instead of balancing to try to make sure that the players always have a fair experience, you balance to make sure that the players always have an enriching experience. I saw a talk a while ago by a Blizzard employee, and he went on length about different things in Overwatch, but there's a very interesting point about how players remember the blowouts. They remember the times that they won in a crazy freak incident, and they really remember the times they lost. Even if it seemed unfun at the time, like, I'm a wood tier and I get put up against 6 diamonds for some reason, and they utterly crush me, I never even get out of spawn. I'll tell that story for weeks. It sort of gives us these narratives of gaming.
When you play D&D, you remember when you rolled a 20, and you remember when you rolled a 1. You don't really remember when you rolled an 11.
But perfect matchmaking, you're gonna roll a 10 or an 11 literally every time you roll those dice. So, arguably, one thing that games could do is generally balance for that 50-50. Try to pull players of reasonably close skill together, but every now and then have a timer where it says, you know what? It's time to teach those kids a lesson. 6 bronzes, 6 diamonds, see what happens. Because now 12 people have a story to tell.
All right, we are, okay, yeah. Life isn't fair. I forgot these slides were here, and I put a picture of a fair when I said life isn't fair, even though I said it already.
You could do better with this slide.
I could, and then I said games can be, and I have a different fair.
But we just said games really can't be.
They can be in a way, right? They can be fair in one aspect, right? And it's like you're trying to escape the unfairness of the real world, right? By going to this game world, right? Because the real world is really unfair, right? Unless you were born with some inheritance, and then you think it's fair when it's not.
But gaming brings a lot more of that unfairness of the world in than you probably realized, especially because you were here at MAGFest. A lot of people can't get here.
So when you make games or play games, right, we can do better to keep the unfairness of the world out, right? We shouldn't, if we're gonna play Monopoly, everyone should start with the $1,100 that you're supposed to start with. Well, I don't know why we're playing Monopoly, but at least we can make that part fair. Right? There's no reason to play Monopoly where one person starts with 5,000 and one person starts with 500, right? Why would we even waste our time on that? right? But that's what a lot of games are these days. Someone's playing Monopoly where one person starts with more money than the other. It's so obvious we don't need to do that. All right, and did we eat up all our time now?
We have 3 minutes.
Oh,
we
God.
could take one question, maybe.
We could take, all right, do we have the rules of question?
We do.
Have the rules. All right, here are the rules of question asking to eat up more time. Number 1, your question must be a question, not a statement. 2, it must be short, no rambling. Number 3, you must stay on topic. Don't ask me what I ate for breakfast, even though it was nothing. Number 4, make it relevant to everyone in the room. Don't ask me about your personal problems or the game you're working on. Everyone else in the room has to care. If you got a personal question, ask it after. No self-promotion. No being like, yo, I'm working on this game called this and this and this. You can buy ads from
One by
MAGFest.
one, everyone in the audience, hands just kept coming down.
All right, if you're brave enough to ask a question and get shot down, we'll go with that dude over there. We got a t-shirt earlier, the one who looked behind himself. Yeah.
Okay, how do you feel about using proxies in Magic the Gathering?
Okay.
So the question was, how do you feel about using proxies in Magic the Gathering? Proxies, this goes back to the earliest days of Magic. I was a kid, I wanted to play Magic, I couldn't afford 4 chiffon dragons. Those are like $40 each. So I had 1 chiffon dragon, and then I had 3 lands where I wrote chiffon dragon on them, and I used them to play. Proxies are great. The fact that you can't use proxies in tournaments is solely due to the monetization model of Magic the Gathering.
Right, obviously in the real world, if you're gonna play in a real Magic tournament, you're gonna need real Magic cards, so you're gonna need to get them somehow, steal them from the game store if you have to, don't actually do that. But when you're practicing at home to save money, use as much proxies as you can, you know, whatever, and then once you figure out your perfect deck, go buy that exact deck so you pay and spend as little money as possible, and then go play with that deck. If I was in charge of Magic, I would put WotC out of business because I would say, everyone have every card, go nuts, right? But
Well, that'd be Netrunner.
that's how it should be, but that's not how it is because the world sucks and some people are greedy and evil. Okay, who's next? Person against the wall.
How do you feel about balancing that against something that's unbalanced? Or, I mean, that's unfun to play against. Like, if it's 50-50.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
the question was around how do you balance against things that, independent of the win ratio, are not fun to play against.
Right.
A good example, old Magic the Gathering. Blue decks. I play a card, dispel,
Right,
counterspell.
mill decks. A recent example would be the Quest Rogue a few whiles back in Hearthstone.
Yep.
Right, it's just completely uninteractive. Right.
Or Overwatch, someone's really good at May.
Yeah, it's like there's some times where something it doesn't win a whole lot. It's just really not fun. You can't even play the game, right? And if you only care about competition, then I guess you don't really have to balance that out, right? But if you care about people having fun playing your game, then yeah, you have to get rid of those things, right? The one that even I'm not really someone who gets upset when I lose, but when I play a game, I just want to be able to do stuff. There's a lot of games where I play and I do my thing and then I lose and I'm like, well, I'm satisfied I got to do my thing, right? You play Street Fighter. Well, I didn't win, but I got to do my super and that was fucking awesome, right? You feel good about it. But if you lose in Street Fighter without hitting the other guy even once and you didn't do any moves, you feel really shitty.
Now, some serious game devs that I know, they've talked a lot about they call it different things. Like, no one's really crystallized on a term for this, but the emotional damage or the psychic damage that a game mechanic does to the other player. Things that prevent them from taking actions, things that make them feel angry. Those have a place in games. Because as you know in Overwatch, a well-placed Mei wall, it's more satisfying than the actual damage it did in the course of the game. It feels good to annoy other people in games a little bit.
And sometimes that sort of thing is right. Imagine, again, Michael Jordan. If I played basketball against Michael Jordan, I wouldn't take a shot. If I did take a shot, I'd be blocked. If I tried to dribble, it would be stolen, right? I wouldn't do a damn thing in that game of basketball against Michael Jordan. If he even were, if I against Harlem Globetrotters, that's a better example, right? Think about playing against the Harlem Globetrotters. You don't do jack, right? And they're going, woo, right? It's like, but in a way, if it's so extreme, it can actually turn around and be fun again, right? With the do nothing play.
But generally,
So-
you want to balance for things that if something causes other players to be personally uncomfortable or makes their experience less fun,
They're gonna
and
stop playing your game.
Yeah, and you want to sell your game, you come up with ways to mitigate that. I am convinced the reason Mei in Overwatch is such a cute, adorable character is to mitigate the fact that she is annoying as hell to play against. Because imagine if Reaper had all the powers of of May.
All right, so we are 1 minute over time. So these are all the panels we did at MAGFest already. This is our website. We do a podcast. You can listen to our MP3s because you're really masochistic or something.
If you want to see videos of all our other panels over the last like 13 years of doing this, including ones about these things, we did one called Why No One Will Game With You. We've talked about game mechanics and game design and practical game theory.
And anime stuff too, and technology stuff, all kinds of stuff.
All of this can be yours. Just take this flyer, and if any of you decide to go to PAX South, we will see you in San Antonio
and this will be on YouTube in like 2
days.
weeks, so post it in all those threads. Okay, bye.